Okay. Hopefully we're kind of going live. Looks like it's me.
It does, I reckon.
I reckon.
Go for it, go for it.
Go for it. So, hello, and welcome to the very first Facebook Live session from Citizens Advice East Devon. My name is Tim, and I'm joined today by our team leader, Sharan.
Hello.
At Citizens Advice, we are here to help support you with whatever advice needs or queries you may have. Our expertise covers a wide range of areas, including consumer protection, welfare and benefits, housing, employment law, money and debt advice, discrimination, immigration, and so many more. Our advice is and always will be free. Our volunteers and paid staff will listen to you, help you understand what needs to be done to move you forward, and support you in that journey. Last year in East Devon alone, we helped over 4,500 people. Citizens Advice have been working with and for the residents of East Devon for over 30 years now, whilst our parent organisation was set up in 1939 in the very early days of the Second World War. We've had a presence in all the main towns in East Devon, but our main bases before COVID were in Exmouth, Honiton and Seaton, where we operated a mainly face-to-face model of support and advice. When lockdown was announced, we transitioned to offering services via phone and the web. We've built on that since then to include Messenger, email, web chat, and a call me back service. So you might not be able to walk into our offices anymore, but you can still contact us through a range of other channels, and someone will always call you back or email you back. So our session today is focusing on redundancy, what it means, the law around it, what your employer has to do, the practical steps you can take, and a few other bits and pieces. So to start at the very beginning then, what is redundancy? Redundancy is a form of dismissal from your job. It happens when employers need to reduce their workforce. If you're being made redundant, you might be eligible for certain things, including redundancy pay, a notice period, a consultation with your employer, the option to move into a different job, and even time off to find a new role. You must be selected for redundancy in a fair way, for example, because of your level of experience or your capability to do the job. You cannot be selected because of your age, your gender, or if you're disabled or pregnant. If you are, this could be classed as an unfair dismissal. Your employer should always use a fair and objective way of selecting you for redundancy. Commonly used methods include last in, first out, asking for volunteers, looking at your disciplinary records, using staff appraisals, and various other bits and pieces as well. Your employer can make you redundant without having to follow a selection process if your job no longer exists. For example, if your employer is closing down a whole operation in a company and making all the employees working in it redundant, or if you're the only employee in your part of the organisation. Your employer may also offer you a different role if one's available. You might even be asked to reapply for your own job, which could help your employer decide who to select. If you do not apply, or you're unsuccessful in your application, you will still have a job until the point your employer actually makes you redundant. So looking at the notion of unfair selection, you cannot be selected for the following reasons. And if you are, your redundancy will be classed as an unfair dismissal. These reasons include your gender, your marital status, sexual orientation, race, disability, religion or belief, age, and a range of other protected characteristics and actions. You can't, for example, be selected for redundancy because you've raised health and safety issues or acted as a whistleblower for unsafe working practices. You can appeal if you feel that you've been unfairly selected for redundancy. To do that, you need to write to your employer explaining the reasons. You may be able to make a claim to an employment tribunal for unfair dismissal. When redundancy is on the cards, your employer can ask for volunteers. You are not obliged to volunteer, and your employer does not have to actually select you even if you do volunteer. Your employer cannot just offer voluntary redundancy to age groups eligible for an early retirement package, as this could be unlawful age discrimination. However, an early retirement package, for example, for certain age groups, could be one element of a voluntary redundancy offer open to all employees. Now, redundancy does carry with it certain entitlements to statutory redundancy pay. You would normally be entitled to a statutory redundancy if you are an employee, been working for your current employer for 2 years or more. You'll get half a week's pay for each full year you were under 22, 1 week's pay for each full year you were 22 or older but under 41, 1.5 weeks pay for each full year you were 41 or older. The length of service is capped at 20 years. Your weekly pay is calculated as the average you earned per week over the 12 weeks before the day you got your redundancy notice. If that's not too complicated, I'll read that back if you want me to. If you were paid less than usual because you were on furlough because of coronavirus, your redundancy pay is based on what you would have earned normally. So they'd look basically at last year's time, so the equivalent period, and work out what you should have been earning if it hadn't been for this current situation. It's worth noting as well that redundancy pay under 30 grand is not taxable. You are not entitled to statutory redundancy pay if your employer offers to keep you on, or if your employer offers you suitable alternative work which you refuse without good reason. Being dismissed for misconduct does not count as redundancy, so you would not get redundancy pay if that happened. Looking at notice periods, you must be given a notice period before your employment ends. The statutory redundancy notice periods are at least 1 week's notice if employed between 1 month and 2 years, 1 week's notice for each year if employed between 2 years and 12 years, and 12 weeks notice if employed for 12 years or more. Check your contract. Your employer may give you more than the statutory minimum, but they cannot give you less. As well as your statutory redundancy pay, your employer should either pay you for your notice period or pay you in lieu of notice, depending on your circumstances. Your notice pay is based on the average you earned per week over the 12 weeks before your notice period starts. And again, of course, if you were paid less than usual because you were on furlough, then your notice pay is based upon what you would normally have earned looking at the previous 12 months, same way we talked about earlier on. Your employer might want to keep you on by offering you suitable alternative employment within the organisation or an associated company. Whether that job is actually suitable depends on things like how similar the work is to your current job, the terms of the job being offered, your skills, abilities and circumstances in relation to the job, the pay, including benefits of course, status, hours and location. Your redundancy could be an unfair dismissal if your employer has offered you suitable alternative employment and they haven't actually offered it to you. So if there was a role you could have done and instead they've chosen Jane from accounts rather than you, then that might actually count as unfair dismissal if you end up out on the street. You may also lose your right to statutory redundancy pay if you unreasonably turn down suitable alternative employment. So if you are Jane from accounts and you're offered a very similar role in accounts and you say no, that might actually mean that you're not entitled to redundancy pay because you've been offered a suitable alternative. However, you can make a claim to an employment tribunal if you think the job you've been offered is not suitable. Say you're the head of accounts and were offered an accounts junior role, you might say, actually, no, that's not suitable, it's not suitable in the slightest. In those circumstances, you might be able to make a claim to an employment tribunal. When you're looking at the alternative roles, if you say you've accepted one, you give the right to a 4-week trial period. The 4-week period could be extended if you need training. Any extension must be agreed in writing before the trial period starts. So if you're looking at a new role, you think there's at least 4 weeks training and then you'd be good to go, then you'd expect there to be an 8-week trial period. You must tell your employer during the trial period if you decide the new job is not suitable. This will not affect your employment rights, including your right to statutory redundancy pay. However, you will lose your right to claim statutory redundancy pay if you don't give notice within the 4-week trial period. So even if it's a day after it's finished, you think, actually, this isn't working for me, it's too late by that stage. It's got to be within the 4-week period. If you've been continuously employed for 2 years by the date your notice period ends, you're allowed a reasonable amount of time off to look for another job or to arrange training to help you find another job. How long you can take will depend on your circumstances. No matter how much time you do actually take, the most your employer has to pay you is 40% of 1 week's pay. So if, for example, you're only going to take an hour off, you may as well take 60% of your week off because you're only going to get 40% of your wages. So use that time effectively and don't be afraid to actually use your rights to the full extent. So that's quite a broad brush summary of redundancy. And now on to some of the questions that you guys have sent in. And I am indebted to Sharan here for her expert advice on all of these things and for helping me sort of come up with the answers to these questions. I can't pretend to be the expert. Sharan is the one you would be talking to if you ever did come in to see us.
Which hopefully you will.
Which hopefully you will.
It's really, really complex, isn't it?
Yeah. So first up, Sarah from Exmouth has asked, my employer is looking to make cutbacks and I fear I might be made redundant. What do they need to do, and what can I expect? So first off, Sarah, thanks for getting in touch, and we wish you the very best for what you're going through. To start at the very beginning, no matter how long you work for your company in order to make you redundant, there are still 3 things you need to see. First, you need to check your employer has not discriminated against you. Second, that you've been chosen for what may be a fair reason, and not, for example, because you've taken action for your own health and safety. And third, if you work for a larger company, that they have held a group consultation. If you've worked for your employer for at least 2 years, then you should check that your redundancy is genuine. For example, your workplace is actually closing, your employer is going out of business, or there is less demand for its services, or that the employer doesn't need your job anymore. Again, you have to make sure that your employer follows a fair process and know what your rights are if your employer offers you another job. Whether or not your redundancy is considered to be fair, you should also get your correct notice period, the right redundancy pay, and paid time off to look for work. If, of course, you've been made redundant while you've been on maternity or paternity leave, or parental leave, when you're signed off sick or been on holiday, there are still procedures that need to be followed in law. It's really important to note here as well that redundancy rules haven't changed because of COVID. If you've worked for your employer for 2 years, or feel there's been an unfair reason for your redundancy, you can challenge it. Your local citizens' advice can help you to do this and help you work out if you have a genuine claim to make an employment tribunal for unfair dismissal or even discrimination. If that is the case, you should write your employer a letter asking them to reconsider their decision. If you're a member of a trades union, fair play, they may be able to help you with this. If you're talking to your employer, it doesn't actually work, you can formally appeal redundancy following your company appeals process if they have one. The first step is a process called early conciliation, and there are very strict time limits for this. You need to start within 3 months, less a day, from the date your contract ends. So if your contract ends on the 1st of the month, then it's probably the end day of 3 months later. So 1st of January, February, March. And if the last day of March be the last day you could do it, make sure you get those timings absolutely right, because
we can help, can't we?
there's a hard stop in that situation. You can start this even if the appeal hasn't finished. ACAS, wonderful people, provide free, impartial services which can help you and your employer make an agreement before making a tribunal claim. It's important to get in touch with ACAS as early as you can if you think that this is something you're going to need to go down. As we mentioned before, if you're going to be made redundant, you might be able to get paid time off for interviews. You should also get help for any debts you may have or see what benefits you might be entitled to. The local job centre has something called a rapid response service, we'll talk about that later on again, RRS, that can help people during the notice period and up to 30 weeks after redundancy. Your employer may also write you a written reference which can be sent to potential employers and job applications. If you are successful and find a new job before the end of your notice period, you won't get any redundancy pay as it would mean that you have given your notice. However, since normally your notice period will be, say, between 1 week and 12 weeks, you may not be successful finding a job in that time, but it's worth bearing in mind. As we said, you can be paid up to 40% of your normal working week to look for work, and you can take reasonable time off work, but you must give your employer notices and tell him why you need the time off. So for a job interview, for training, for reskilling, for whatever it is, for coming and seeing us. If your employer refuses, direct them to the ACAS guide on redundancy. And Sarah, when you get your final pay, this should include redundancy pay, your final wages, pay in lieu if you're not working notice, any holiday pay you're due, any outstanding bonuses, commissions or expenses. And as we said, the first £30,000 of your redundancy pay is tax-free, and for any money over that amount, it is taxed at your basic rate. If you pay a high rate tax, then contact HMRC and the Taxes Helpline, they'll be able to sort you out there. Once your employment has finished, you may be able to claim some benefits such as New Style Job Seekers Allowance, JSA, or Universal Credit whilst you're looking for work. You may also want to speak to an advisor, a financial advisor that is not one of ours, if you have a lump sum to invest, or to a debt counsellor if you're going to find things financially difficult. Here at East Devon, we do have an excellent debt team. We've invested quite a lot in this resource now, so we've got plenty of people there who can help you. They'll go through all your incomings, your outgoings, look at all your creditors, help you to know who to contact first, what are priority debts, what are called non-priority debts, make you, support you getting in touch with those people, and generally help you to manage that period between one job and the next one in terms of making sure you don't rack up late payment fees, non-payment fees, that sort of thing. The important thing here, Sarah, is that you've got to look after your own mental health. Redundancy can be stressful enough for families, and there are many organisations who provide free helplines for people to talk about these sorts of issues. Looking after you at these difficult times is something that we're also really, really keen to help you do. Okay, so I hope that's helped. Anything I missed off the line, Sharon?
I think it'd be really helpful if we put down the email address at the bottom of this thing.
We will do, yeah. We'll yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Now the make an advisory be yet, Tim.
Okay, now Tom in Seaton has asked a question. Can they ask me to leave immediately? That's quite a concern, Tom. So again, harken out to your situation there. Quick answer to that one is that normally if you're made redundant, your job doesn't end straight away. You will get a paid notice period. As I said, that can be between 1 week and 12 weeks. So if you worked for them for less than 2 years, that'll be a week. If you've worked for them for 12 or more years, then it's going to be up to 12 weeks. You might be told that you don't need to work this period, but you still get work benefits such as pension contributions unless your contract says otherwise. Again, check your contract. This again can be quite important, because if you've got a 3-month notice period and they say you don't need to work it, but then they try and not pay your pension contributions for those 3 months, that can be quite serious. So, and also in terms of your PAYE and everything else that you have to make sure they're paid. So check your contracts, check your final wage slip and pay against that contract, and any issues around whether or not they've actually given you everything you are required to have, please do let us know, because we can help you with that. If you don't have to work your notice period, that either means you'll have to be paid as usual but don't have to come to work. That's called gardening leave. Looking outside today is not day you want to be doing actual gardening, so it's just a term rather than anything else. I think most of us, unlike me, I didn't get to work from home, but most are probably bored sick of doing those odd jobs around the garden, but still. But you get paid in lieu of notice and get your job end straight away. This is called pilon, payment in lieu of notice. If you're not quite sure what the situation is, or if you just want some sort of clarification and support, please do come and have a chat to us. Okay, on to the next question. This is from Ian in Honiton. And he's asked us, does it matter if I've only worked for the firm for less than 2 years? Well, yes, Ian, I'm afraid that does matter, for a number of reasons. Number one, the notice period you're required to give you is just 1 week. Equally, you will not actually be entitled to any statutory redundancy pay. And there won't be any paid time off to look for work, but given that you've only got a week anyway, that may not be quite so important. But the important thing here is no matter how long you have worked for the employer, they still can't discriminate, choose you for an unfair reason, and nor not hold a group consultation if they're making more than 20 people redundant. So there's always there's a holy trinity there. So they can't discriminate against you, it's got to be a fair reason, and they must consult. If they haven't done any of those things, if they discriminate against you because of who you are, that's actionable. If they chose you for an unfair reason, for example, I don't know, say you've got a disability, and you're the easiest target, let's say, to use that kind of language, then that's also actionable. And if they haven't held a consultation period, then you need to take action on that as well. So you still have some rights, they're just not as good as those rights would have been had you worked for the employer for more than 2 years. Anything I missed on that one, Sharon? No, not a sausage. Okay. Quentin in Exmouth has got a question for us. He says, what's the difference between voluntary redundancy and compulsory redundancy? So I think we covered this one quickly earlier, but voluntary redundancy tends to be open to all employees by a company wishing to downsize in general, whereas compulsory redundancy is where a company decides which jobs or people it wishes to leave. It could be in a larger company, they might actually prefer to go to voluntary redundancy because then it's up to you. In other situations, for example, as we said, if the whole organisation, the whole wing of an organisation is closing down, then everyone who works in that will be made redundant, and those could be those compulsory redundancies we talked about. As I said earlier, you don't have to put your hand up for voluntary redundancy if you don't want to. It is voluntary. So if they go for voluntary redundancy, but you're absolutely adamant you don't want it, even if they're looking straight at you when they say voluntary redundancies, don't put your hand up, stick to your guns, you've got your rights. Equally, even if you shoot your hand up and say, yes, please, me, the employer doesn't have to actually choose you for redundancy. It's a two-way process. They can ask, you can say yes or no, they can then decide whether or not actually you're the ones that they want to make redundant there. Compulsory redundancy, as I said, is where they've chosen fairly, they haven't discriminated, they've consulted fairly, but it's your job which is for the job. And in those situations, you have all of the rights available to you.
Right, that's fine.
Doing well here, doing well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just look and see if we've got any questions coming in on the live.
No, because there's probably only Lisa watching it, Tim. We should say hello to Lisa, really, shouldn't we?
Oh, ye of little faith, Sharon. Ye of little faith. Okay, one question from Cranbrook and Ben in Cranbrook. Hope you're doing well over there. Ben's asked, I've been given notice of possible redundancy. Does that mean that I will be made redundant? Very good question. Well, Ben, that depends on what you mean by notice. Normally, an employer can only give an employee notice of redundancy once they've completed their consultation. It could be that in this case, what you have received is a letter explaining that the company is looking at the possibility of redundancies. If that's the case, that means the whole process is still to come. The letter is saying, here's the situation, guys. Things aren't looking great for us. We might be looking at redundancy. Your job is one of the ones that might possibly be there. In which case, they will have to, again, go through that holy trinity of have they discriminated, have they chosen fairly, have they consulted. If the first you're hearing about your redundancy is this letter saying, sorry, you're being made redundant, then clearly they haven't, at the very least, they haven't consulted, in which case you'll have an actionable claim. You should come and talk to us as quickly as you can, and we can help you out. If on the other hand, this is the first stage in the process, then follow the steps we've talked about. Check the process of choosing candidates is fair and non-discriminatory. Check it's a genuine redundancy. They're not just, for example, making you redundant from accounts and then rehiring somebody to exactly the same job back in accounts. That's not a real redundancy. And then check the employer has followed the consultation process. If it's not clear from the letter you've received or email or whatever it is, then you can send it across to us, or just get in touch with us via any of our channels, by Adviceline, by phoning 01395 265 070, by emailing us, by texting advice to 82727, or by contacting us on Messenger. One of the advisors will have a look at it and they'll be able to advise you on what to do next. So I hope that helps. Was that Ben?
It was Ben.
It was
yes.
Ben. I'm
The
getting
only thing
better.
with Ben that he needs to remember that timescale.
Yeah.
3 months less one day when he's going to go ahead and do anything. It's really important that he gets to us, so he gets to ACAS really quickly, because there is, there's something we can do to extend that bit for him. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, Ben. So again, in all of these things, the quicker you can take action, the quicker you can talk to us, the better it is for you. And also, the more time it gives you to raise issues with your employees. It could be genuinely, this is the first time a lot of employers have been in this position as well, and they might be trying their level best, but actually not quite getting the right advice. So if they are trying but just haven't quite got something right, point it out to them. They'll hold their hands up to you and we'll go back to begin again and start the process, make sure they've got it right. The important thing here is to keep those channels of communication open wherever we can between employers and employers as well. The more amicable it can be, the easier it is when things haven't quite gone right.
It's to do with negotiation here as well, because there might be things you're able to do to actually negotiate.
Yeah.
So you don't end up in redundancy if you're willing to do maybe another role, or take maybe even a pay cut or less hours. There are things that we wouldn't necessarily recommend, but you might want to consider that just to keep your job, really.
Keep your job if it's something you love doing, an employee you love working for them.
Absolutely.
And talk to them, because also things get better. We're in a situation where the employment situation across East Devon, we know in some places looking pretty grim, but equally we always hold out hope that things can improve, orders can come in, things can change. Moving on now back into Exmouth, and Alana would like to know, what government support do I get? Okay, so Alana, once you know you're going to be made redundant, you can contact Job Centre Plus immediately. Now, they have a rapid response service, RRS, and they help you find work. There's an email address, I'll put it on the socials after this, where you can so they get hold of them. You need to email them and ask them how they can help you, and contacts include your contact details, the town and postcode where your business or your work is located, location of the redundancies, and sort of contact details for you. They will then be able to give you useful information about finding work to pass on. You may also be able to claim certain benefits. So talking to the job centre in this particular circumstances is really, really beneficial.
But come here to help with benefits.
But yes, it's certainly.
We've got people that are experts here, haven't we? Like Abby and Lisa. Explain ladies.
Yes, we have lots of specialist services here, specifically around benefits. So, for example, if you're looking to go into universal credit for the first time, we have a help to claim team that'll be able to look at that decision for you to decide whether or not it's the right thing for you to do. You weigh up using what's called a better off calculation, looking at if you're on, say, tax credits, working tax credits, child tax credits at the moment. Are you better off or worse off going across to universal credit? How will that affect certain things? We'll be able to support you as well with any additional issues. So, for example, if you have a disability or someone in your family does, they might be able to claim PIP, or you might be able to claim PIP. We'll look at all kinds of additional benefits that can come with that. So, come to us if you're concerned. We can do a general benefits check. We can look at what you may or may not be entitled to, help you with that process. And also, if you then do need to make a claim for universal credit, we can talk and walk you through it.
It only takes about 20 minutes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's always a good idea to have a benefits check whenever your life changes, because you just don't know what's out there, and a lot of people don't know what's out there, and there's massive underclaiming in this area.
Huge underclaiming, and it's also really important to point out that benefits are entitlements, so things that you are entitled to. If you're entitled to it, go ahead and claim it, because no one else is going to benefit if you don't. So take any support that you can, because it can also be an underlying benefit. So you might get things like council tax reductions in certain areas, or you might be able to get access to support for blue badges if you're disabled, that kind of thing. There's lots of things that flow from being receipt of certain state benefits, and it's really important that you take those while you can. Okay, moving over to Axminster now. And Imogen would like to know, how soon can I apply for support? Well, very similar to our previous question there, Imogen. As soon as you feel able to ask for help for finding work, you should be entitled to time off paid to look for work. So as soon as your employer tells you that you are one of the people slated for redundancy, whether it's a 1-week period or a 12-week period, from that day you can be asking for paid time off to go and look for employment or for training, to attend interviews, to come and talk to us. Your employer will have to pay you a maximum of 40% of your working week, so make sure you use that time effectively. Again, as we said previously, come and talk to us about any potential benefits you might have. Consulting trained advisors such as us, we have all the tools, all the experience, everything in the locker that you need to make sure that you're making the right decision about any benefits, that you look to claim at the right time, that every box is ticked on the relevant forms, so that you're making sure you're getting the right advice and the right support. Yeah. When things change, it's a great idea to come to us with a benefit check. It could be that you've been entitled to things previously which you didn't even know about, so we can always support you with that. So the bottom line is that as soon as the employer tells you you're on the line for redundancy, you can expect them to support you in terms of time to look for work. You can ask us for advice on benefits and entitlements. You can talk to the job centre about any potential roles and support that they can give you. You can also talk to us about debts and any other sort of payments that are going out, so that we can look at how we can contact your creditors, maybe get things like payment holidays, that sort of thing. I hope that helps a little bit there, Imogen. Catherine's over in Ottery. She'd like to ask us, I rent my property. If I'm made redundant, how will that impact my tenancy? It's a question certainly a lot of people are very, very concerned about.
Very popular question.
Huge question, very, very loaded. And okay, so this depends on whether or not you can pay your rent. If you're going to struggle to do so, if it is the case that actually once you've got the redundancy payment and you're down to your benefits and that, it's going to let your landlord know as soon as possible. For a start, you might be able to come to some sort of arrangement to have, for example, a payment holiday, or some kind of reduction for a period while you're looking for work. You might also be able to apply for some form of housing element on universal credit to tide you over. Although this is likely to be less than you pay in rent for private properties, but It's also worth thinking about the fact that the local council, in our case East Devon District Council, has discretionary housing payments that you might be able to apply for. So what we're looking at here is you get every option on the table you possibly can. So letting your landlord know, ask about the possibility of a short-term reduction or a 1-month holiday while you look for other work and minimise those outgoings, talking to us about any entitlements, talking to the council about any possible extra income there, and again talking to your creditors about possibly some sort of payment holiday. We are soon to be launching a money management course which covers all aspects of money management, debt management, how to understand money and budget effectively, how to get out of debt and stay out of debt. If that's something you're interested in, please do let us know. It's going to be available on our website. It's going to be a 3-session series that covers all areas of money management, debt, how to get out of debt, how to stay out of it, free for everyone, and really looking forward to being able to get that one launched, so watch this space. And when you are having those conversations with your with the advisor here, or we've got those numbers on the spreadsheet, look at them, make sure that you look at things like priority debts and non-priority debts. So priority debts include things like your rent and your council tax. Those aren't going anywhere, and failure to pay those has really significant repercussions potentially. And again, with all the things we say is the more time you can have to talk about these things with the people who you might be owing money to, the easier it is. For example, if you've signed up to say a Sky package and on the highest one, and you look at it thinking, actually, I can't afford that anymore, they won't be able to let you come down to a lower package. Rather than 2 years ago they would just said, tough, pay up. Nowadays they will let you, they will find ways to support you down to a lower package or spread the payments over a longer period of time. A lot of companies now are really making really important steps in supporting you in this thing. So whatever it is, find a way to talk to them. And say, for example, credit cards might be able to, rather than keeping your credit card live, they can basically treat it as a loan that you pay off rather than a card which is still active. So they will basically close the card and give you a period of time over, say, 3 or 4 or 5 years to pay off that debt rather than you continue to accrue more interest on it. So again, the important thing here is to talk to your providers, make sure you know exactly what the debts are, and have a plan. The better you can plan in advance, the easier this will be. And also just be aware that you've got skills. You're coming from jobs where they won't have wanted to make you redundant. You've got skills, you've got experience, you've got talent. Someone out there will want you. So just keep positive, keep looking for things. Something will always come up. So I hope that helped. Across now to Sidmouth, where Indy would like to know, should I inform my mortgage company of my redundancy? Of course, as we've just been saying in the previous spiel there, it's always a really good idea. So if you haven't yet had a mortgage holiday, during the COVID period, if you were furloughed or if you weren't furloughed, if nothing changed for you, then you didn't need one. You may, up until the end of this month, be able to negotiate a mortgage holiday. Even if you have already had one, they may be able to extend it for another 3 months. Mortgage companies obviously heavily invested in this sort of scheme. The last thing they want is to be having people defaulting on their loans. They will be really, really happy to talk to you about how they can support you. So important thing to notice is it's not free for a month. The money still accrues, interest still accrues, it's still payable. They might just give you a sort of 3 months off, having to pay it immediately now, so that you can find better circumstances, and then you'll have to pay it off eventually. But again, talk to them. They've been mandated by government to be flexible as far as they possibly can. So be persistent with them. Just be really straight up with them. They prefer you to have a conversation with them up front rather than to be chasing you 2 months down the line because you've defaulted on 2 payments. So that's a different conversation. That's a different department going to be contacting you. You want to talk to the friendly department with the smiley faces, not the angry department with the briefcases. So yeah. As I say, if your mortgage company may be able to extend your term, if you think that's an option, then please come and talk to us, talk to them. If you are talking to them but you're not getting them, definitely talk to us and we can see what we can do. It's amazing the difference getting a letter from Citizens Advice can make to a conversation with a would-be creditor. It goes from the angry department with the briefcases back to the smiley department with the happy faces again. So please do come and talk to us, and we will use whatever clout and influence we have and our many, many years of experience in getting things sorted to help you wherever we can. And final question from us today. Nothing's coming in on that one. New. Gentian from Exmouth asked, is there any support for child costs when taking on a new job? First objection, hopefully that means actually you have found a new job, which is brilliant news. Congratulations. And I hope it goes really, really well for you. We know, certainly I know, a father with 3 little ones, bless them. Looking for work can be really difficult if you have upfront childcare costs. Recognising this, there's a new scheme now from the Job Centre work coaches that should help. So often our clients with children, they want desperately to go back to work, but finding childcare can be a real barrier, and paying for it, but even get your first paycheck, can lead to great hardship for families at a time when, frankly, you know, it could be that a couple of months off and this is your first one back, so you're trying to, you know, to scrabble it back. So the new guidance says that universal credit claimants who need help with these costs should speak to their work coaches. They will help them apply for a grant from the Flexible Support Fund. There's 150 million sitting in this fund for this financial year, so that runs until the 31st of March, to help claimants who move closer or into work. Through this fund, if you go and talk to them, you've got a job offer, but in order to take it up, you've got to get your child into a nursery or anything, and they want paying up front because their business is like everyone else. They can pay up to 85% of childcare costs compared to just 70% of your legacy benefits. And this can claim for a whole month for starting a job. So you're due to start the job in November. You can actually claim this money in October so that your child can get into the place that they need. You have the chance to go and start your job. And by the time things have caught up again and then you're getting, you know, in receipt of the actual, your wages in arrears, and you can pay it, then, you know, jobs are good and you've been supported.
The good thing about that is you don't pay that back. It's actually, which is, you know,
Flexible Support Fund just got even better. Not only is it a sum of money that will allow you to pay up front for your childcare costs, or 85% of them, but you don't even have to pay that back again. So again, that's a really strong
that's
support.
how I read it anyway. So,
That's actually how I read it. Any
read
questions
it,
with that? I'm sure someone will point out to us if we've got that a little bit wrong. But yeah, that's a really strong incentive for people who are on universal credit to allow them support them getting back into work, make a difference to your family kind of there, and also just supporting those childcare providers who, let's face it, many of them have been through the ringer these last few months as well. Their own businesses have been threatened by this. So fair play to all of you amazing people who look after our kids who are at work. We could not do it without you. So yeah,
it includes our husbands and wives, doesn't it?
Includes our husbands and wives, in case they might be watching. Mrs. Bridger, yes. So yeah, so there is a scheme available to help you with childcare costs for getting back into work. If you're concerned about it, let us know if that's an issue. We will talk to you. We can refer you onto it, and we're, you know, really, really pleased for the work that we do with our DWP partners, our Job Centre Plus, all our work coaches. Hats off to you guys for the work you've done over the last few months through COVID. The fact that you've been able to do so much business as usual whilst being so flexible in some of the ways as well is a massive, massive bonus. And, you know, I think through all of this, we've all really established so much better working relationships with the agencies that we work with, and I hope that can only be a benefit for all of our clients, all the people who might need our services. Okay, so that was a quick run through of redundancy, what it means, and that's all the questions we had in advance of that as well. So unless there's anything popping up on our Facebook Live feed, we'll call it a day. So if you found this helpful, would like another session on, say, housing and welfare, please do let us know. Any queries or questions, or to talk to us about your circumstances, you can contact us by ringing 01395 265 070, or emailing us on inquiries@eastdevon.org, or ring a National Adviceline service on 03444 111 444. We are currently working on ways to open the doors to the public, not quite the way we did previously, but hopefully that will happen quite soon. Until then, I'm Tim Bridger. This is Sharan. This has been Facebook Live, and all the team at Citizens Advice East Devon look forward to helping you with advice queries. Stay safe.